All right, we now continue. We continue with the lecture, which may go on and on for the whole week and more, because the title is too big to be good for the lecturer or for the audience. Key threats to international security. What they mean for Russia and what they mean for Africa. I will concentrate only on 4 points, which does not mean that there are no more points which I would not provide you a list. But I would not want to run through all the things. And I would not like to rush too much, because what they mean for Russia, yeah, sure, I can share. What they mean for Africa, I guess this is what those 5 colleagues who would make presentations tonight from African countries for the seminar, they will be most welcome to react. This is a good opportunity as a reminder. German, could you just show up again? That we need to register the 5, the bravest 5, for the seminar, and I'm not sure that the list is complete so far. So German will be checking with you how you made your homework in accordance with the program. I also would like to start what I partly but very briefly mentioned in my video address to you, and actually just to share my very, very special appreciation of Africa, African nations, African people. I should have done much more in my life and in my travels to know Africa much better than I do, because my experience is certainly very, very limited. I've been to, or if we talk about all Africa, not necessarily south of Sahara, I've been to Morocco, I traveled to South Africa, I traveled to Madagascar, to Tanzania, and what is slightly less Africa for many reasons, but still Africa, the Seychelles Islands. So some parts I know much better than others, but everywhere I got only incredible experiences. So this is for the Russian part of this audience. Not necessarily many of you have your plans on the careers on Africa. This is not the message today. The message is there are so great places to go. There are so friendly people to meet, and there are so many discoveries to make in different parts of Africa. This is why my list, my travel list, my travel waiting list on Africa, this is the longest, because I definitely want to see more and more and more. Now, back to the key threats to global security. Let me emphasize a few dilemmas. As I say, I would list to you 4 elements here which, in my view, drive the global security agenda for the current times. How long they will be driving remains to be seen, but they definitely will be driving the agenda for the next 2 to 3 decades at a minimum. So if we want to look at the first part of the century, I think it has been, is, and will be relevant. First dilemma is that although the world is not unipolar or bipolar in the geostrategic sense any longer, the world is not polycentric yet. This is a transition period which would be very juicy for the historians who would write about it in the decades to come, and who is extremely challenging for all of us dealing with international relations and international security today. United States, although is no longer that unique superpower player, which it was for a few years between 11/9, between the fall of the Berlin Wall and 9/11, which indicated the end of the triumph of the only superpower. So United States, which is no longer that unique superpower player, it tries to pretend it still is, and it still tries to project its power regionally and globally as if it were the only director of the orchestra, of the global orchestra, as if it is still the times when United States decides for all, I would say, trying to do the dictatorship of the American democracy projected in all the countries, including my country, including your countries, because this is the universal policy which has different applications here and there. At the same time, of course, what we have been witnessing, is the appearance of new centers of power and BRICS, of which you had already a lecture, very well reflects certain elements of it, although not all elements of it. India, China, Brazil, Russia, South Africa, in different senses, with different power and potential, still these are independent players in the global, not only on the regional scene. And others are coming. But why it is not exactly polycentric? Because of the future of the international system would be, hopefully, inshallah, not in the new group of major players who would, instead of one, take all the decision-making in their hands. But it should be a concert which invites everyone to participate. Big and small, more ambitious and less ambitious, more influential and less influential. Realities are very different from that direction. And of course, the super empire of the United States, or if you like, the Anglo-Saxon world, with the old Brits and new Americans, who are definitely not new, they want to keep the global order which brought them billions of dollars and comfort zone. They know comfort zone is over. Their hegemonic behavior is over. And the most recent challenge for them was brought by my country, who, after quite a number of years of its own soul-searching, and after a few years of waiting, tolerating, hoping that maybe a more peaceful option is open, had to clearly, unequivocally explain to the global minority that their dictatorship of democracy is no longer tolerated. This is a difficult battle exactly because others do not want to lose. They don't want that to go. They know historically they will go. But as the Roman Empire, who could many centuries ago feel that they would go, not necessarily wanted immediately to say, okay, we shut up, we dissolve, we just go back into much smaller borders. No, Roman Empire for quite some time wanted to project its power when it already realized the power would go and the empire would fall at some point. And that may be even more painful than in certain other times, because the more transition period takes its flourishing, its development, the more aggressive those who are historically losing become. Such aggressive that they can be ready to use all the means here to keep their monopoly on truth, monopoly on manipulating global resources, monopoly on what they try to explain to us as truth, because they say in the United States only them know what is truth, and they kindly share it with us who do not know. This is an approach which we here in Russia strongly decline and counteract. And we are in a position to do so because of our own centuries of history, of our own decades of learning, including a short period of time and a very painful period of time when some of us here in Russia were confused with the change in our own country, taking some words coming from Washington or London very naively as words of friends. No, they're not friends. The second element which I want to share with you, and the second dilemma, if you like. On the one hand, the world, thanks to the internet, thanks to the fact that travels are becoming, not for all, but for many, more affordable than before, looks like a smaller and smaller village. Yes, that global village where we all know each other. A person in Uganda knows some person in Russia who makes very good meat, as Dmitry Polikhanov explained to us, and so on and so forth. There is a feeling, probably an illusion, that we all live in the same village. Thanks to the media, of course, and thanks to other reasons I just listed. However, the global minority led by the Anglo-Saxon United States and United Kingdom would like to jump in that global village saying, okay, we have rules of the house for the village. Yeah, that's fine, global village. But this is how it should be. This is how it should be. This is how we see the rules, and the rules include those things, including in values, in morale, which are completely unacceptable, alien to most living in this village called Earth. But we are told, no, we know. This is the code of conduct. We have it for you. We are the village. You should follow our code of conduct. Your cultures, your traditions. No! Come on, forget it. We're part of the village. Let's have McDonald's, jeans, LGBT, and this is how it is now the value and the rule of the house for our village opening with McDonald's. And that's a problem because it's true that the most of the money in this world, the most of the cash of this world is still concentrated in one part of that quasi-village, which I now criticize in the Anglo-Saxon part. And one cannot ignore that fact. Most of the weaponry, most of the weapons, including the most sophisticated ones, are also concentrated there. So if you do not want peacefully to get their code of conduct, they will say, your cash is not accepted here. This ATM will not give you any cash. We just turn you out of it. Oh, you try to use this social network. You're out. And even if then you say, okay, I can develop my own social network, why I should use yours? Or you say, okay, I have my own currency, my own traditions, I can deal without your bank. I will develop mine and my real friend's bank. That they would use weapons because they know they have more. Because they know that it will be very painful for you. Even though historically they will lose, tactically, temporarily, they may win. And of course, they know that old Roman motto, which they have been using when they colonized huge parts of the world, and which they continue to use. Divide and rule. That's it. Easy like that when it comes to many issues. And we understand that it is difficult, it is hard. As for the individual in the mass culture world, it is very hard to be yourself, to be your own personality, not carbon copy, not copy-paste of that image, which is believed to be the only right. The same is true for the nations. It is easier. It is easier to say, okay, you give me code of conduct, I read it, I agree, I sign it. Nice. You lose your identity, you lose your culture, but you feel, you get McDonald's, of course, it's even better. But it doesn't require much effort from you. Your grandchildren probably will not know that there was a history of your own country, of your own nation, of your own tribe, your own people, of your own family, because it all will be copy-paste from some example which came from that empire which tries to project whatever power, military power, psychological power on the universe. And it applies to all factors of life, to the vote in the United Nations, or to the traditions and losing of traditions for the whole nations and nationalities. They started from the territories they occupied first. How many of you visited Native Americans in the United States? I did. I went to their reserves. They live in reserves. They do have McDonald's, a lot, for cheap. They lost their history, dignity, and culture. Not all, but most of them. Some resisted, but very few could. Hawaii, annexed by the United States, far from Africa, but providing you a very good example of how our Americans built their own empire here and there. I believe in the wisdom of the people, and I think that the resistance to that is stronger than a temptation to take it easy, to get it easy, and to lose your own identity and your own values. When we were conceiving BRICS, then it was BRIC, 2006, 2007, I was one of those who was at the origins of BRICS. We believed that the importance is not to be against someone, but to find common things for us, and not to teach others how to live, what the values should be. The values should be respected. And respect is something very important. We in Russia are here very sensitive to that. We can be very flexible people, but when we're not respected, we may, for a while, take a pause. We may not necessarily react immediately, but after some time we do react if we are not respected. And I'm sure for many of you here say, ah, yeah, it's like in our places. That's important to keep respect. And my lecture is not on BRICS, but when we were conceiving BRICS, when we were thinking of BRICS, we were thinking first of BRIC, and then I was so happy that I was one of the lobbyists for South Africa to join. There were skeptics, I remember, and it was not that long ago that we saw South Africa in. I came to Durban for the beautiful BRICS summit then, already more than 10 years ago. Now BRICS is not a teenager any longer. It's matured. Maturing means sometimes more pleasures, but also more headaches. Now we have others, including two more African players, Egypt and Ethiopia, who are very warm welcome, and I very much look forward to their participation in Kazan at the summit. But I think in both cases of Egypt and Ethiopia, like South Africa before, the issue of keeping its own values, its own dignity, was very much on the agenda, has been, and for just full respect of these two very ancient nations. More ancient than the United States, needless to say, and having much bigger history. Okay, number 3, the third dilemma, if you like. Some may say it's not a dilemma, it's just what we already have, fait accompli. It's appearance of new technologies in our life. There are many of you here who can give us lectures here on that, coming from Africa with your own experience in IT, from what I can see from your bios. And you can see how it's changing lives. First it was internet some time ago. Then when I was coming to parts of Africa, which were in West Madagascar, quite difficult to reach, everything was challenging except for internet. Internet was working. This is, I'm telling to my Russian students here, that there may be many problems, but the problem of how to find internet connection mostly is solved in Africa. You can go looking for a bottle of pure water, but at the same time you may have difficulty with the water, with the pure water, but normally you would not have that much difficulty with the internet connection. I may be oversimplifying, you can tell me, no sir, there are problems, but this is a very quick trend, very impressive trend. Also, it becomes cheaper. Africans cannot afford many things, but the commercials, the advertising you can see of competing tele companies in Tanzania, I remember just, well, that's here, there, very dynamic, very dynamic. It's not something of newcomer, it's already fact of life. But with that fact of life, we certainly see both the greatest opportunities where new technology, including AI, artificial intelligence, bring to our lives, but also huge risks. Huge risks, because these technologies can be used both for good and for evil. They're already, like darknet. I'm not mentioning more for the students the challenge for a professor coming from the AI, when some write their essays and not necessarily use their brains, but they use those resources which help you create something which you pretend is yours and which is not. I now returned from Kazakhstan, which is not Africa, which in part is very developed nation, in parts it's developing nation. You know what the biggest concern of the common people there? Our children do not read any longer, do not read books. They read some brief messages on the phone. Is this the future? Then it will not be America who would make all of us brainless with their mass culture. Then it would be us, ourselves. Because blaming on technology is wrong. We are not luddites here to say, let's destroy the internet. How come could we invite our African friends here without having strong internet connection, emails, and so on and so forth? Do not use some social networks because they're spying on you. Is it the best option? No. Then you become paranoid. Finding the right balance, this is the response. But this is the most difficult, because it is easier either to do nothing, to pretend there is no problem, or to prohibit everything, to ban everything, and it will not work. But pretend that you address the issue and you're a strong guy. So finding the balance is exactly for the international relations experts on whatever spheres you work, in government, in technology, in business, in academia. But that requires so much work, including the interdisciplinary work. Just one example of my own, and I do not pretend I'm the tech guy. I have to, as all of us have to, but I am not a tech guy. I remember I was at some point working as advisor to the Secretary General of the United Nations. First it was Kofi Annan from Ghana. At some point I worked with Ban Ki-moon from Republic of Korea. And my bosses at that time, particularly Ban, they instructed at some point to provide them a report on the axis and nexus between new technology, particularly on the artificial intelligence, and some other cyber elements and weapons of mass destruction, nuclear, chemical, and biological. This is not my lecture for today, but I must say that there was quite a huge nexus we found. When I say we, I worked not only by myself, but with the colleagues from almost all regions of the world. Because never ever you would find the solution for the global issue working on your national basis. It should be international by itself. And it's another message also to my Russian colleagues when we try here by ourselves, sitting in a bunker to invent something thinking that it would be for the global good. No, we just by default need to work together with our colleagues here and there who have healthy attitude and values and who are no less than ourselves are interested in the prosperous future and keeping our own values for ourselves, not getting them imported from some other places. Right, now I'm coming to my fourth element, which is about this period of time, this transitional period of time, where we have a coexistence of traditional types of mega weapons, which are nuclear weapons, and new types of weapons, which are not necessarily weapons of mass destruction in the traditional meaning, but who have the global impact if they are used. I'm speaking about cyber weapons, and it echoes a little bit my previous point, weapons in space, and other weapons with the global strategic strike capability. And this is exactly the world when they would coexist. We had here a cliche, peaceful coexistence. Whether weapons can coexist peacefully, I'm not sure. I think weapons are weapons, so they are unfortunately used from time to time, even such most dangerous weapons as nuclear ones. And here I come to some of my points for address both for the Russian but also for the African colleagues here, maybe a little bit, which help us build further discussions today, tomorrow, and day after tomorrow on that, particularly when some may say, sir, it's so far from us, your nuclear weapons. We have our weapons of mass destruction, which are machete, and they really kill many people. I know. Look at the Great Lakes tragedies, previous decades, other examples. No, nuclear weapons were used there, but so many people were killed. And nuclear weapons, they were not used since 1945, thanks God. But it's all interconnected here in this world. And while the global village is not necessarily what we have, the world really is becoming smaller and smaller. Even in the first nuclear weapons use, and it was Hiroshima in 1945, in August 1945, by the United States. It was African factor, because the bomb came from Africa. Well, of course, not the bomb, I know. The uranium. Where did the uranium, which was used in the Hiroshima bomb, came from? Congo, of course, it came from what now we know as DRC. At that time, of course, it was Congo, then Zaire, then back to DRC. That's right, sir. Africa, completely innocent on that, was used as a tool for the weapon grade material. If we look at the map here, you may tell me more what parts of Africa were or have been affected by the non-peaceful nuclear factor. Because of the peaceful side, it will be a different story, much more positive. Tell me. one? Why? French nuclear tests in Algeria. Correct. Some may forget, but the French were not only fighting Algeria, trying to make it French province, trying to kill the anti-colonial movement there in the late 1950s, early 1960s. But they also used Algeria as their playground for nuclear weapons, for nuclear tests. That's true. The French nuclear program developed that much, partly thanks to the tests in Algeria.
Testing.
Huh?
It was used for testing.
Yeah, for testing of nuclear weapons, right? Any in Sahara, yeah?
Oh, South Africa, I guess.
South Africa, sure. 6 nuclear weapons produced in South Africa and the apartheid regime. Good news, they all were destroyed when it was a transition from the apartheid regime to the rule of the black majority and democracy. South Africans did it nice. They were not transparent at all. They did not share any information on that. But they came very clean at destroying their nuclear weapons. But they had it. It had been a big question whether South Africa could have used their nuclear weapons against the neighbors. But look, you all were born in a different era when South Africa was concerned. But in the 1970s and most of the 1980s, South Africa was leading a series of wars, particularly against Angola, against SWAPO independence of Namibia, against Mozambique, and in Angola it was the hugest clash between South Africa on the one hand and Angolan government, my country, Soviet Union, and Cuba on the other hand, with some others like Zaire involved. And of course, United States very much indirectly involved. And at certain moment, South Africa could decide this. This is what nuclear weapon is for. Let's use it in a regional conflict and solve all our problems immediately. A huge temptation. They never did it, just make it very clear. And finally, they came to a wise decision that they will be much happier without nuclear weapons than with nuclear weapons. Libya, yeah, never had nuclear weapons, but Muammar Gaddafi, that funny guy, pretended that he knows how to make them. He made an imitation nuclear program. And his son was going to the secret services in London, somewhere in a nightclub in London, telling them, you know, my dad is going to have a nuclear weapon. This is a ship coming. You can stop them. Why? Because Muammar Gaddafi wanted to exchange what he didn't have for recognition of himself, for putting the tent on Champs-Élysées, and so on and so on. Very much you should see for him, and like that. The guy did everything wrong. Because if you are serious with nuclear weapons, you make them. And you don't pretend that you know how to make them. The guy ended quite painful. Right? So don't play with nuclear weapons like Muammar Gaddafi did, but the example is right. And of course, Chad was nearby with the uranium, so for Gaddafi it always was important to have uranium resources next door. Any other guesses? You made it very well. I think my list is almost complete. It's of course also the problem not only on the continent per se, but also in waters nearby. Yes?
What about Egypt?
Egypt, good point. Egypt never had nuclear weapons, but at some point Egypt was looking into the secret nuclear weapon program. Egypt had stopped at an early stage. Today we do not know anything that Egypt wants to have nuclear weapons. We think it doesn't. Quite the opposite. You will get a lecture later on that it develops peaceful nuclear energy and build a nuclear power plant. So far it's okay with Egypt. But historically, we have certain bells ringing. We even have certain bells ringing from Algeria itself. Not that much, not that much. From Egypt, it was more. Yeah, but east of the continent, there is another problem because there is Diego Garcia, which is occupied basically de facto by the United States, former British Indian Ocean territory annexed from Mauritius by the Brits and then given to the United States. And it's so tiny on the map, people don't know that much. Well, in Mauritius they do, because part of their territory was gone. Some of you, I'm sure, know, but many people pretend so small, it's not important. It's very important. Well, the United States is the main base. How many things, ships, aircraft carriers, with nukes on board can be around? I can only guess, but the risks are there. Africans were very wise in preparing and signing the Pelindaba Treaty, which is the treaty of establishing a zone free of nuclear weapons in Africa. And Pelindaba is, of course, a place in South Africa on which it was named, although it was signed in Cairo. So basically, from Cairo to Cape, if you like, the zone which declares Africa nuclear weapon free exists. For that, African nations feel quite happy and feel, in my view, that importance of concentrating on development, not on huge unnecessary spending just because your neighbor may have it. It was in Latin America when Brazil and Argentina were spending millions of dollars on their own nuclear weapon programs because they were suspecting each other. In that sense, maybe lack of billions of dollars in African nations helped at some point. But I think also the wisdom of African nations here, as well as the fact that all African countries except for one are members to the cornerstone treaty on the global security, which is the Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. My Russian students already got a lecture on that. My African colleagues, if you're interested, we will provide you more information here. You can just go, it's free, it's digital, it's easy. You can do it from Lusaka or from Addis Abeba or from Mogadishu or Entebbe or Kampala, wherever you came from. Right now, no, because you may need to be fresh for some other lectures. It's in English. And je m'excuse pour mes collègues des Congo. I know it may be not that easy for some here to follow us in English, and appreciate still your efforts, but I hope we can use it. If you want it in Russian, no problem. I can tell you how to find more information in Russian at my institute's website, ПИР-Центра. So this is an online course in English by the leading Russian experts. And here is also digital. This is the textbook where you can find more information on what nuclear non-proliferation means, why it is important, what the challenges are. Just go there, download, enjoy. Either in full or in those parts which may be relevant to your work, to your interests, and share with your other colleagues who may be interested. It's also the channel of my institute of ПИР-Центра on the Telegram. Telegram is widely used here and there, so well, WhatsApp or so on. I'm flexible, but we use the Telegram channel, and please, if you like, visit. It's not only about nuclear stuff, it's more information about our institute or our activities. But I wanted to end that we're always happy to provide you more information, educational tools here from Moscow. You're our guests now, you're our friends, just feel free. But you also in Africa, you have great experts and great diplomats and knowledge people with great knowledge, wise men on both North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. We'll just list some of the names. Some wisest people, unfortunately, passed away, but they left their heritage in their books. So Africa has a lot of knowledge, a lot of experienced people on these major topics like nuclear weapons, nuclear proliferation themselves. One of my biggest, greatest friends, unfortunately, who passed away was Mohammed Shakir from Egypt. Another Mohammed from Egypt is Mohammed al-Baradei, who was running International Atomic Energy Agency for many years. One of the most independent people. With all the pressures Americans were trying to put on him, he resisted because he had dignity and knowledge. Dignity without knowledge also doesn't help. It's important to have both. So Mohammed al-Baradei is certainly one of those names. In South Africa, Tom Markram, one of the leading experts who until recently worked in the United Nations, now mostly retired, but so far happy to share his knowledge of that. From Zimbabwe, David Fisher, he passed away a few years ago, one of the most knowledgeable people I know. Boniface Chidiasiku, my very good friend who was operating many global issues leading the process for the 190 plus states members of the NPT, and also for some time ambassador of Zimbabwe to Moscow. So I listed just a few people. If I continue, we probably do not have time for the Q&A. But my message is, come to our resources. Sure, discuss it with us, but do not forget. And I'm sure you tell me more people and more knowledge in your own countries, which have been producing wonderful, very expertly individuals on international security, on the major challenges to it. Thank you for that. We have some time for the Q&A, and I can take your questions if there are. All right, I'll start. Yeah, please. Victor. Mike.
So, are there any prospects of further military cooperation between Russia and African countries?
Yeah. Military cooperation in the defense sphere. Yeah, we do. I think there was partly a question addressed to Dmitry Polikhanov, a similar one on the previous session. We do have cooperation, which we call military technical cooperation, in Russian, военно-техническое сотрудничество, what is, with quite a number of African countries. We do not feel that we are ashamed of that. Quite the opposite. Almost every year, there is a big conference, international conference in Moscow or outside Moscow on security matters organized by the Russian Defense Ministry. Last year, 2023, I was pleased to see a hugely increased number of colleagues who came from different parts of Africa. On the level of defense ministers, deputy defense ministers, or defense attaches here, everywhere. And of course, Russia continues to develop ties with those with whom we already have been having very close ties traditionally, with some from the first years of independence from Africa, year 1960. With others, it's quite recent. I had a very good chat just a few days ago with the defense attaché of Burkina Faso here in Moscow. Yeah, we're sure we have it in that part of the world, who in that part of Africa, who have their own vision. We're opening our new embassies in Africa. Actually, Russia cuts its staff in quite a number of Western nations in our embassies. And we're opening more and more in Africa. You know, 2 or 3 embassies which we opened most recently in African countries. All of them actually south of Sahara. Guess. Oh no, we had it there. We had it there, at least to my knowledge. We had both presence of our private military company there, but also, to my knowledge, we had an embassy there. If I'm not correct, no, I didn't mean Bangui, no. We opened our 3 new embassies in Ouagadougou, Burkina. I know Russian students already making notes what embassies are waiting for them. In Juba, South Sudan. You remember I said there is one country in Africa which is not party to the NPT, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. This is South Sudan. Well, they had other business to do, many other headaches, right? But I'm sure our embassy in Juba will, in a friendly way, explain to them that they may want to join. Because sometimes my students here in Moscow ask me, why South Sudan? Either developing nuclear weapons? Time for South Sudan to join. And the third is Malabo, Equatorial Guinea. Hablamos español. And this also gives you, Victor, some hint where Russia is coming. For instance, with Equatorial Guinea, we already have a very strong military cooperation, but I personally do believe we have much more. Some time ago, Soviet Union had a very good naval base in Angola. By the way, I'm not African expert at all, so just my humble knowledge here. Maybe there are other good places for the Russian Navy in other parts. But I would like to emphasize that point which was made in the previous lecture. No way Russia should limit herself only to traditional security military cooperation. It would be completely wrong. If or when it develops, it should go hand in hand with human-to-human contacts, with development projects. And indeed, we had huge experiences here in the previous times, like Aswan Dam in Egypt, like major projects in different parts of Africa. And I think we are ready to go on. I would not be that skeptical on that. I think it's time to think in a friendly and in ambitious way. Limiting it to traditional military cooperation, it's okay, but it's not ambitious. It's not the way it should be. There should be different elements here.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, there is a question here on the first row.
Thank you so much for your lecture. My name is Anastasia, and I wanted to ask you about the security questions. So you've mentioned in your lecture that nowadays countries are under the process when they are losing their individualism, and this is very
identity, right?
Identity, yeah, the history, traditions, and so in this way, don't you think that multipolar system is not a guarantee of safety? I mean that sometimes some kind of rules becomes very, so countries are used to the rules of game and they don't want to change something, change the new traditions, new culture. So what do you think about this?
Anastasia, I think there are no guarantees at all in this life. Those who will tell you I am president for the whole life does not have any guarantees. You may be religious or agnostic, but there is, you do not can produce any guarantees for all. You can make it more insurances relatively, but no guarantees. The same applies to the nations. The same applies to the international order and international relations. So the fragility of the international order will continue. Some may even say, once my president, Vladimir Putin, he noticed that with the unipolar world gone, there is not only charm of polar world, and polycentric world, but there is also a headache of polycentric world. Because when you have a system, complex system, it may work or it may be pure chaos. Look at the Middle East. Do we want the current Middle East situation be produced for other regions? No, thank you. The missiles flying here, the responses there, it's a complete mess. So nobody says it would be easy. Who said that? And just defending your own identity, defending your own culture, even your own history, because some may say that they know your history better than you. It always requires effort. Thinking of history, we also should think of the future technologies, even more sophisticated than the current technologies. The traditional way, like Umberto Eco described it in the classical libraries, where you keep the truth and the knowledge, was already something misleading, because there were some pages which were original and many pages which were corrected by those who kept the books. In the future, your own history, your own nation history, may be rewritten in a digital way. And if you show your papers, no, it was like that, sorry, said, no, the papers are not valid any longer. This is a digital system which somebody would write for you. And it is good if these are some honest authors in Wikipedia, but together with honest, there may be very dishonest one. And there may be even a systematic change of the digital archives, which only the future generations will get, and they will not know it's fake. Whether it's fake or whether it's real, in our personal relationships, sometimes it's difficult to judge. You think it's real, and then you find out it's complete fake. Yeah, in international relations, it's the same, or maybe more difficult, but as painful for the nations to find the fakes as for the individual to find the fakes. For that, what do we need? Education. Education. Uneducated people can be manipulated easily. They believe in something which is invented by others, either to get the money, or to get the brains, or normally to get both. An educated person does not allow to manipulate. Educated nation is stronger. Is I'm not saying immune, I'm not saying guaranteed, but is more immune to external pressure than uneducated one. Investing in education always pays off. Okay? Any other?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys. Why wouldn't we stop here? Particularly as I do not disappear. I may be back and forth here. I may be with moderating some of the lectures. I may delegate it to some others. But I would be most happy when we have some breaks and when we have some less formal discussion on tonight as well as on Saturday, hopefully, to listen to you. And do not be shy in expressing yourselves. Thank you very much for your attention. I know some of you have even longer day than others, and it would be a very long day today, even with some starvation, because dinner for some will be very late. For that, I suggest 15-minute break, so you have some fresh air, and you reconvene here at 5:30. Does it make sense? Svetoslav? Okay, good. 5:30, you're back here.